So like I said earlier, hi everyone. Thank you for joining tonight. We are going to go through a number of different things. My hope is to give you a broad overview of the program. Therefore, we're going to discuss program logistics, what to do when looking or what to look for when selecting chapters and applications to host. And I'm also going to leave some time at the very end for you to ask any questions that you may have about the program. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. All right, so we should be seeing a second screen now, correct? Raise your hand. Are you all seeing a screen that says Girls Academy Overview? Okay, you all are saying no, you're not seeing a screen that says Girls Academy Overview. Oh, technical issues. Hang on. How about now? Okay, great, perfect. Sometimes the system loves me and sometimes it really hates me. Okay, so everybody's on the same page. Sorry, I was going through the questions. You were all telling me that you couldn't see it. All right, so Girls Academy is a 28-hour long overnight event. It's an experience for middle school aged girls to get to participate in free of cost. The girls should be grades 5 through 8, but it's preferred that they're 6 through 8 because the learning curve is very different from 5th graders to 8th graders. Chapter women and association members will help make this event happen by volunteering their time and resources in a number of different capacities. Girls Academy is intended to help middle school girls build confidence, self-esteem, and help them learn not to be bystanders when it comes to bullying. Girls stands for Girls Inspiring Respect, Leadership, and Service. In addition to chapter and association volunteers, Kappa headquarters will send 2 lead facilitators to help oversee the event. These 2 facilitators have been trained extensively and have adolescent experience. The chapter will also select 10 small group facilitators to help throughout the event, and the association will select 2 members, the on-site area coordinator as well as the alumni association representative. The association and chapter will, in addition to these small group as well as OAC and AA representatives, will supply event staff to help with all of the program logistics needs. Typically, event staff is about 20 or so people. All individuals, whether they're event staff, small group facilitators, lead facilitators, OAC, AA rep, they all have specific duties that they must complete, which can be found in their event manual. Chapters are given this event manual after they are accepted to host. Once the chapters have decided that they would like to host and or apply, they are expected to complete an application. There are 2 application periods each academic year. The first academic period is October 1st through November the 15th, and that would be to host the following fall. The second period is from March 1st to April 15th, and that would be to host for the following spring. So the individuals that we just selected this past fall at the end of November are going to be hosting fall of 2017. The application that we ask them to fill out is not necessarily extensive, but it does require a number of approval processes, you being one of them. And we also like that our chapter members take time and put effort and thought into their application. So while the application process only has a few short answered questions, we do take those short answered questions we do look at them pretty heavily weighed to make sure that the chapter is really ready for an undertaking as large as this. Once the chapter has been selected to host, it typically takes about a year to plan, fundraise, and finalize any logistics needs for the event. Typically, chapters don't have a signed-on middle school before they apply. The only reason why a signed-on middle school would be there before they apply would be if they've hosted multiple times previously. We'll touch on this a little bit later, but there are a few, and by a few, I mean a total of 2 at the moment, that are self-funded girls' academies. And that means that they have purchased all of the supplies and have trained local facilitators so that there is no travel cost associated with their lead facilitators to help them with a Girls Academy event that happens every single year with a specific middle school in their area. So they also go through the application process, but them going through the application process is more of a formality. They have also a different funding structure, so they're kind of the anomaly to the program. I can talk with you all a little bit about that later if we want to, but since they're such a minority, I'm going to typically exclude them for this webinar. So, what to look for when a chapter is saying that they potentially want to host. Before applying, chapters and associations will ask permission from both their district director as well as you, their philanthropy specialist. It's your responsibility to evaluate whether or not the chapter and association are actually able to host an event such as this. This is truly not a small undertaking, and it's definitely not a small feat, so we want to make sure that they have the manpower and the capacity to successfully host. So therefore, we ask you to look for a number of things. One of the biggest things to keep in mind is typically when the chapter council and association apply to host, the same leaders are not in the same position come time to actually make this event come to fruition. So we need to make sure we have overall buy-in by all of the association and all of the chapter members, not just a select few. So first, we ask that you work with the chapter and association to identify areas where the chapter and association have collaborated previously. Again, they have to collaborate a large deal with this program. So if they've collaborated previously, we want you to see whether or not it's been successful. And if you can identify a few different things from their conversations as to how it's been successful. If they haven't collaborated previously, we need to evaluate whether or not they have a plan to foster that working relationship and become a collaborative group, because oftentimes if they've not collaborated previously and this is their first task, it's a pretty heavy feat. So we need to make sure that they're ready and prepared for that. Secondly, we ask if the chapter has the ability to raise $3,500 and or if they've budgeted for $3,500 already. Some chapters just include the $3,500 in their annual budgets, whereas other chapters choose to fundraise. So having a sense as to whether or not the chapter is going to fundraise or budget or what is going to happen and how they're going to come up with that money, and if the association is going to front some money is really important. In addition to the $3,500, the chapter and association will have to raise roughly $1,200 for food for the event, as that is not covered in their $3,500 fee. This food can be donated, but oftentimes it's purchased because it's easier and people don't really do the donation pieces in the timelines that they need to be done. So we need to make sure that realistically a chapter is able to put about $4,700 in one fiscal year towards this event. Third thing we ask that you look for is whether or not the chapter has engaged members, high involvement, and the ability to actually support this program. By having conversation, you should be able to determine this. The conversation should be had with few select chapter leadership as well as association leadership. Fourth, does the association and the chapter have engaged alumni in the area that would be willing to donate time and or resources for this event? It is very expensive. In addition to it being very expensive, it takes a lot of time. And so we need to make sure that they have the ability, the manpower, and the willingness within their area to ensure that they can recruit the correct number of volunteers to make this happen. Fifth, is there a middle school around that they would like to partner with? And or have they already begun conversations with a middle school? Sometimes they've hosted previously and have an ongoing relationship with the middle school. That was kind of what I just talked about earlier. We do have a few chapters, Minnesota, so the Chi chapter, Loyola Chicago, which is the Ada Lambda chapter, and Arkansas, the Gamma Nu chapter, have now hosted 3, 4, 5, 6 years in a row. And so they have a pretty steady and established relationship. Chi and Ada Lambda are both the self-funded groups. Gamma Nu, after this year, will become self-funded since they will have done 3 years successfully on their own. Oftentimes, the self-funded groups have a different funding model because they have purchased the supplies themselves. But if the chapter is hosted before, we want to make sure that we know if they plan to stay with that middle school or if they've decided that they want to go with a different middle school. All of these are key things to keep in mind when you're having a conversation with them. One of the last important things that we need to talk about is whether or not the chapter is in good standing and or are they on council action. We do consider warning of probation a piece of council action since they have received a letter about their status. We ask that all chapters be in good standing, but in some situations, exceptions can be granted. It just truly depends upon the situation. We also want to make sure that if they're not in good standing, we have the further conversations with their district director, with you as their specialist, just to ensure that we are really prepared to either approve or not approve, dependent upon the situation. As we all know, oftentimes chapters on council action or some sort of fraternity action it's a very unique situation, and there's not two cases that are ever the same. So we like to make sure that we understand exactly what's going on before we say yes or no to each chapter. So next steps. After chapters have been approved to apply, they submit their application to me at headquarters. They just email the application to education@kkg.org. We ask that they include all parties on that application that come into headquarters so that everybody's aware that that the chapter or association has applied. It is important that before a chapter applies, they've looped in the association and vice versa. We are coming across more and more instances of one another applying, presuming that the other party will help host if they were selected, and the two have actually not had a conversation before the application has come in. It really doesn't foster a good working relationship, and it makes the event very hard to plan, and it oftentimes puts all of us in a really bad situation because we either have a chapter or an association that's upset because they weren't in the same agreement and understanding that they were going to be having to host this and typically provide some sort of financial obligation. So it's really important that all parties know about this situation, and you being their philanthropy specialist for both the association as well as the chapter can be that link to ensure that everybody is aware. Once the application period closes, we select applicants based upon their content of the application, recommendations from you as well as their district director, and we also look to see whether or not they've previously hosted. We do take into consideration financial need. The application states whether or not the chapter needs a grant in order to host. As you know, we have chapters that are in all different financial statuses. So we need to make sure that we offer opportunities for chapters, especially smaller chapters, to have the ability to host this event. And we don't want finances to be a burden or a barrier for them. So a grant typically is $2,000, meaning that the association and the chapter would still need to raise $1,500 plus the food, but we need to take into consideration as to whether or not the chapter can host if they haven't been given that grant, because we're only given so much money each year, each fiscal year for those grants. And if the grant money is gone and they can't host without that grant money, we do have to consider that. We typically select between 8 to 10 chapters a semester. If we have more applications, they're reviewed and determined based upon financial need and recommendations. We also try to offer the opportunity to have a mix of new chapters and associations to host each year. So, and that doesn't necessarily mean like our newest colonies. It just means we want to make sure that we're giving new, and by new, chapters who have never hosted before the opportunity to host. We don't just keep offering other chapters, the opportunity to host a third, fourth, fifth, sixth year. At that point, they need to become a self-funded chapter and not take one of those 8 to 10 spots. We just need to make sure that we continue to grow this program, and so we have to have that good mix. So once I've selected my ideal chapters and associations based upon their applications, I notify you all for final approval, questions, concerns, etc. I typically will give you what I gave you this past semester of a description about the association and chapter, what I liked from their application, and whether or not I feel that they would be a good fit for the program. I also like to get approval from their district director as well, just to make sure that all concerns are considered upfront. If I'm given the okay from both of you, I notify the chapter then as to whether or not they've been accepted. We do try and do this quickly. So from the time the application closes to when I notify the chapter is normally less than 2 weeks from one another. So for an application period being until November the 15th, a notification should be out by December 1st. So when I send you all the, hey, I need your okay or you're not okay email, that typically will have a quick turnaround. It's not because I'm trying to be difficult, but it's because I'm trying to make sure that our chapters get these answers quickly so that they can begin to fundraise, plan, etc. right away. After a chapter has been notified, if they are accepted, the association and chapter will be expected to mail a $500 deposit check to secure their space. This check can come from either the association or the chapter. It can come from a donor. It can come from whatever or whomever it needs to come from, but we do just have to have the $500 deposit check. If they do not mail the check, the chapter and association spot will be given to the next on the list, and or that chapter will not be permitted to host if there isn't another person to go to. So we really take that 2-week period seriously. In the past, we've had them submit a $500 check with their application, but it's been a pain to hold on to those checks. And if a chapter or association isn't selected, we have to refund those checks. And so it's just easier to do the deposit check after they've been selected. Once the check has been received, the chapter should secure a Girls Academy coordinator or 2, dependent upon size. The coordinators will serve as the chapter liaisons to ensure that the program goes on without a hitch. Liaisons are welcome to have a committee, and we say typically the more the merrier. As long as they have a role and a responsibility, we are good to go. The association will also be responsible for securing members to help. They will need to have 2 women commit to help for the entire time. The first will serve as the on-site area coordinator, which is what you'll see referred to as OAC. She will be on site at all times while GA is happening. She will also help serve as a liaison for the middle school. And then the association representative, which is the AA representative, will help with volunteer recruitment and additional logistical needs. The AA representative also helps with overnight accommodations for our lead facilitators that typically have to fly in. Once those individuals have been secured, the group needs to begin vetting middle schools. They can choose middle schools in their area, or they can choose middle schools that are up to a half hour outside of their area. But we do like to make sure that it's not too far away, because our hope is that we continue an ongoing relationship where post-mentoring events will happen between the chapter, association, and the middle school. So if it's too far away, we're not going to continue to have that ongoing relationship. It is sometimes difficult to find a middle school that's willing to sign on to the program, so I'm always happy to help with that. We've had issues with superintendents. We've had issues with state legislation not letting kids spend the night in a middle school. We've had issues with background checks. We've had issues with fingerprinting. So I'm happy to help with any of those obstacles that may come up. The chapter and association are also given 2 recruitment packets to assist with vetting a middle school. They're expected to have a middle school signed on by May the 1st if they're hosting in the fall, or October the 1st if they're hosting in the spring. If they don't have a middle school signed on by those deadlines, they're typically given 1 extension, and that extension is between 10 days and 14 days. If they can't meet that, we will pull the plug and the chapter will not be permitted to host. Once the event contracts are signed between the middle school, the chapter, and association, the chapter is then assigned 2 lead facilitators, and moving forward, these lead facilitators will assist with all chapter questions, logistical issues, and planning. The lead facilitators will lead all the trainings, the pre-conference calls, and will also be on site the entire time. As I just talked about, there are 2 lead facilitators assigned to each GA location. They are designated by lead 1 and lead 2. Not that one is more important than the other, they just have different roles. These women are highly trained Kappa women that help our chapters and associations with all training and logistical needs. They are vetted, they go through an application and certification process, and they've shadowed a previous Girls Academy event before they're even asked to facilitate as a lead. Typically, these women also have a background in adolescent development and or age school teaching. So most of the individuals that you will see come through your door have some sort of connection to middle school aged girls or boys in some capacity. Lead facilitators are on site throughout the entire event. They also spend the night in the middle school from Saturday night into Sunday. They arrive Friday night and will do training with the chapter on Friday evening as well as with the association. They don't leave until the event is over on Sunday. So for those that fly out, they typically don't fly out any earlier than about 3 p.m. The timeline for the event, pre-training is on Friday night, but the actual event itself will begin at 8 a.m. on Saturday and it goes until 12 p.m. on Sunday. Lead 1 will manage all of the large group sessions. And therefore, when the middle school girls aren't in those small group sessions with the chapter women, the lead 1 will be helping them through the curriculum in the large group setting, as well as overseeing all of the small group facilitators that are our chapter women. Lead 2 will manage all program logistics. So she's going to work with the volunteers. So typically the OAC and the AA representative will work very closely with the lead 2. She makes sure that volunteers have everything planned from meal times to getting deliveries there, to the leadership fair on Saturday, to the Saturday night activities that all of the girls get to participate in, to making sure that there are enough chairs for the graduation ceremony. That is her responsibility. The little tiny details are truly what Lead 2 is in charge of. So the funding process. The funding portion of Girls Academy typically brings the most questions. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask them. Chapters and associations are expected to raise $3,500 in order to host a Girls Academy event, and that money is due to Kappa headquarters, more specifically the foundation, 60 days before they are hosting. The $500 deposit counts towards that $3,500 raised, but everything needs to be raised 60 days before. If they fail to raise the money that has already been raised will be moved to the General Girls Academy Fund within the foundation because the money has been donated on the pretense and the purpose that it would be used for Girls Academy. Chapters and associations are typically not deferred if they are unable to host. Depending upon the situation, we take that on a case-by-case basis. Sometimes a middle school will back out on them very last minute. We try not to punish a chapter for that. But if the chapter really hasn't done their due diligence in planning and or fundraising, at that point, it's not necessarily our problem. Their emergency doesn't become our emergency. And that's something that's hard to that's a hard piece of this, that as much as you want to make it happen, they have to want to make it happen as well. And the funding is a big portion of that. Our foundation also is very, very helpful in helping find donors in the area. Should a chapter be struggling, we can connect them with somebody in the foundation. And typically we can try and find a few donors in the area that are willing to help us meet that $3,500 goal. In addition to the $3,500, they will need the additional funds for food for the event, including all of the snacks. They're responsible for breakfast, lunch, and dinner on Saturday, and then breakfast on Sunday and goodies for the graduation ceremony on Sunday as well. Those goodies could be just a sheet cake, or they could be cookies that are donated. They could be whatever it needs to be. It doesn't need to be extensive, but they're responsible for 4 main meals in the 2 days. Our IT department has also helped me create a tracking tool so that chapters and associations can see exactly how much money they've raised. It also links straight to the foundation so that a donor can click on the chapter's name and donate to that Girls Academy event. When we're finished, I will show you where that link leads so that you can keep an eye on your chapter should you want to. So as you can see on the screen, the $3,500 is broken down as follows. Lead facilitator training, lead facilitator travels and meals, it's about $700. School facility rental, utilities, and stipend. A school is given $1,000 stipend if they have 50 participants and if we receive the post-event evaluations from the parents. That stipend is prorated dependent upon how many students we get and how many evaluations we get, but we do budget for that $1,000 there. Participant workbooks, we send those to the chapter. Those cost roughly $350. T-shirts for 50 participants and 30 event staff. They should not really be making their own. They should be using ours. Additional materials, supplies, and giveaways. So I send them all of their supplies. These are covered in that $200. Printing and copying. So all of the printing and the copying, the curriculum that I do, the registration packets, the promotional materials, all of that is included. Postage and delivery. We pay for all of their supplies to be sent to them and then to be returned back to us. Administrative costs. So that's the $500 for the work that I do with the program, for an overall program cost of $3,500. There are some cases in which a chapter's expenses may exceed $3,500 on our end. We don't ask for more money from the chapter. They will never know if they've spent more or less than the $3,500. We just take care of that on our end. $3,500 on their end will cover the cost of hosting for this event. So at that was the general overview. I'm going to exit out and show you where that tracker was going to go, and then we'll take some questions. Okay. Okay, so you should all see on my screen the CAPA website, correct? Raise your hand. Okay, great. So if you come up here to education, we're going to click on it. We're going to scroll down to the bottom, and you can see down here, donate to Girls Academy. All next to these donate to the Girls Academy have different percentages. This shows you how much money has been raised for their academy based upon their total to goal. So for example, Georgia Southern is hosting this fall. They have 14% of their $3,500 raised. Kansas is hosting this spring. They have 59% raised. So this is a good way for you to check in. If you donate online, this tracker updates immediately. If you send in a check, it typically has about a week delay. As soon as we get it, it's deposited and it's written to that chapter's account. It's then shown on this tracker. If there's a school on here that's supposed to be hosting, but is not like you see them missing here, it's because we've not received a single dollar from them as of right now. So, for an example, the University of New Mexico was potentially on the docket for this upcoming fall. They are not on this list, and that's because we've not received a dollar from them. The trigger percentage is $3. So once we receive more than $3, you'll see them on this tracker. The other neat thing about this is you can click on the chapter's name, and there will never be an association name on here just because of how long it makes it, and we need to keep it clean. You can click on the chapter's name. So if I go to the University of Minnesota, it automatically took me to the foundation page so that I'm donating to Minnesota Girls Academy. This is all on the public side of the website, so chapters and associations can ask for money from parents, grandparents, people that they babysit, best friends, whomever they may be. They don't need to be a CAPA in order to get to this information. So we tried to make it as easy as possible so that chapters know exactly where they can fundraise and how much they have left to fundraise. So with that being said, I'm going to go back to our slideshow, and I'll take questions now. Okay, to clarify, are applications accepted any earlier than March 1st? Yes and no. If they want to host for a spring semester, then no. The application period only opens March 1st to April 15th. If they want to host in a fall semester, they'll open October 1 to November 15th. Does that help? Okay, great. Next question. Okay, so Kelly asked that I talk with all of you about how applications have been down and how we plan to address it. I don't know if this year has been an anomaly or not, but this past semester, it was like pulling teeth to get applications in our door. We had 8 total applications, and now we're down to only 6 that are going to actually host in the fall of 17. And that 6 number just happened today, actually, with 2 of those being self-funded groups and 1 on its way to being a self-funded group. So we really didn't have a whole lot of new, and we didn't have a whole lot of interest. So I think what we plan on doing is we are doing a couple of different things. First and foremost, we are sending out a survey to all chapters and associations that have not applied to host within the last 3 years to try and gauge why they haven't applied to host. Do they not know about the program? Is it too expensive? Do they not have a middle school in their area? Can they not collaborate with a group? Do they not have the financial need or the financial ability to do it? Do they not feel like they have the support to do it? We are trying to gauge as much as we possibly can. And we also are trying to see if it's a marketing issue. Are we not marketing it enough? And if we aren't, what are the avenues as to which we should be marketing it? So I think for you as specialists, it's really helpful if you can help be our boots on the ground. And when you're talking to philanthropy chairmen and associations, it's really beneficial to have a conversation if you feel like a chapter might be good at hosting a girls' academy, to encourage them to apply. Because I also think that part of the piece of this puzzle is that there hasn't been the encouragement to apply. Second thing we're going to do, and Kelly will be involved with this, and I'm sure she'll have an in-depth debrief with you all in the next couple of weeks. We are bringing in a Girls Academy curriculum team to headquarters the first week of February, and we're going to look through those survey results as well as an overview of the general program. We're going to look at the curriculum. We're going to look at the funding. We're going to look at the branding. We're going to look at it all to make sure that the program is still relevant and that we're offering the best program we possibly can. In the past, we typically have had about 15 to 20 applications a semester. And right now, like I said, we're pulling teeth to get 8. I don't know if it's truly just an anomaly. We had our structure change, and that might have changed the way that chapters were supported, and it just was a year of transition. We also put out the new member experience. So for chapters that had a fall recruitment, that was another big thing that they were dealing with when applications were due. We really don't know, but it's important that we start to evaluate that. So any information and insight that you all can provide as we are trying to evaluate why, or if you're hearing anything, it would be great for you all to provide some insight as well. And then next question, and if there are more questions about that topic, please continue to feed them in. I'm happy to answer them. If there is not an AA near the chapter that they normally work with, can the chapter still apply? Yes, the chapter can still apply, but they have to have a very solid action plan for how they plan to get alumni support. There doesn't necessarily need to be an AA right in the same area, but we do need to see, okay, what advisory board members are willing to help, what alumni in the area are willing to help, whether they're an advisor or not. We need to see what kind of, I know that our chapter women are also adults, but we really need to see what kind of adults are willing to be involved in the conversation. More specifically because of the relationship with the middle school. Oftentimes a middle school principal does not want to talk to a college sophomore. She or he wants to talk to somebody who is established and who is able to have a conversation and will return emails and phone calls in a very timely fashion And that typically comes from our association members. So yes, they can still apply, but it is definitely something that we weigh into consideration heavily if we have potentially some other strong applicants as well. Hopefully that helped answer that question. Okay. So I talked a little bit about new versus previous hosting chapters. All things being equal, would a chapter that's never hosted get a slot over one who has, or does it depend? It truly does depend. I think I would look at you all. I would also look at the circumstances within the chapter. I would look to see if where their district director would potentially have some weigh in on that. We also may be able to see if we could select both. If a chapter is hosted previously, we may be able to start working with them to become a self-funded group. But at this point, we've not really had too much of a problem with that being an issue. I think it would truly just depend case by case, and that would be where I would work heavily with you all to ensure we're giving the appropriate chapter the slot to host. I do like to try and get some new chapters in there so that we can continue to make this program a good experience. And I also would think it would depend upon whether or not that chapter has hosted 5 years in a row or whether they hosted 5 years ago and are now trying to host again. It truly just depends upon the situation. I know that's not a great answer, but it's case by case a lot of the times with Girls Academy. Okay, it looks like there's another question. What else can the philanthropy team do to support and promote GA? I think it's really important to just continue to have the conversations. I think we also have not really had many people out there promoting this from a volunteer engagement side of things. So you all being volunteers that are heavily involved with our chapter women now, it's really important that as you're having monthly calls or monthly check-ins with your philanthropy advisors, see if we can get some chapters to want to apply and or put the bug in their ear and help grow the idea with the chapter so that they may not be ready that second, but maybe they could be ready in a year. I also think it's important that when we're talking about our different philanthropic opportunities that we include Girls Academy with that philanthropic opportunity. We will talk about RIF, and RIF is very important. Girls Academy and RIF can go hand in hand. We also have the ability to talk about the foundation when we talk about philanthropy. And Girls Academy is a piece that is also helped funded by the foundation. So I think chapters oftentimes think of philanthropy as Kappa Crawfish or Kappa Carnival or a RIF event or Al's Fleur-de-Lis and waffles or something like that. I don't know. You all know what I'm trying to say, but we can think outside of the box. And I think that challenging them to look to do a Girls Academy program is something that can really be beneficial, and it could come from this support and the help of the philanthropy team. And also helping them recognize that every single year, a Kappa Crawfish doesn't necessarily have to happen. We could focus our efforts somewhere else for 1 year, and then you can go back to Kappa Crawfish if it's not something that you want to do, or if you only feel like you have the manpower to do one large philanthropy event each year. The cool thing about Girls Academy, and this is a good sell on it, is the opportunity that it is philanthropy because we're raising money, but it's also service because you get the hands-on experience, and it truly is a life-changing experience. And so that's something unique that a Kappa Crawfish or a food philanthropy doesn't give you. Yes, you raise the money and it's so satisfying to see that check go off somewhere and you know you're doing good. But in order to have that hands-on experience, you get to do the good right in front of your eyes and see that lasting experience as you do those post-mentoring events. So hopefully that also helped. Okay, I'm going to give us about 10 more seconds, and if I don't see a question come in, we'll close out for the night. Okay, I don't see any more questions. I know that that may have seemed quick, and I really thank you all for getting on tonight. It was a very brief overview, and I know that I did a lot of talking at, and we didn't do a whole lot of engaging with because of the webinar piece, but I am happy to answer any questions as they come up and hopefully can help assist when chapters and associations come to you asking for approval to apply in the future and or ask for your help when with supporting this program once they are accepted. My information is here on the screen. If you need anything else, please feel free to contact me, and I hope you all have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.